This is exactly what I knew was going to happen. But I'm learning. I'm learning, so we'll figure it out. Now let's see. We should be going live now. Oh, yep, I see us.
Looks like it.
Exactly what I knew was going to happen.
Cool.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is my first live stream, um, first official live stream. We did some testing earlier today, so some other people might have gotten some notifications about that if anybody's following the channel. This is going to be a new series. I'm still deciding on whether I'm going to call it the Tao of Talking or the Tao of Talk. I'm not sure yet. I'm kind of doing some A/B testing, if you will, see what kind of responses I get. Pierce and I are going to talk for a while. I'm going to, ask him some questions. We're going to have a conversation. And when we think we hit a point where we can let other people in and up to talk, we will do so. In that, I've been given some recommendations to state some rules of engagement here. I want to try and keep things civil. I don't want any arguing, name calling, bullying. I don't want any fights up here. But if I get any fights up here, I will kick people out. I want to keep it civil. So just to be frank, we're going to keep it a civil conversation today. I'll be Frank instead of Jeet for a moment. So just a tiny little bit here, just in case people haven't followed along with my channel very much. Jeet Kune Do is a reference to Bruce Lee's, or Jeet Kune Show is a reference to Jeet Kune Do from Bruce Lee. And it's the theme here is kind of along the lines of his philosophy, which I extract from reading from him and learning about him and him being a hero of mine when I was young. That his martial art was basically consume everything and learn and take the best things from all things, whereas martial arts during his time were very focused on themselves and saying this is the best martial art. And he was the one that sort of opened up the world, became controversial. So to cut it short, that's what Jeet Kune Show is. It's a variety show where I can just basically release content to my whim on anything that I want to do. And one of those things I like doing is talking to people and engaging with people. So I haven't decided whether this is going to be a full-on interview style or if this is just going to turn into conversation or somewhere in between. But that's kind of my purpose and my approach here. And that being said, Pierce Watkins is on my show today. He's a fellow content creator. I've watched his show. I became friends with Pierce online, and I've followed his stuff. And I wanted to give him an opportunity to introduce himself because I'm talking a lot. So I'm going to pass the mic over to him for a minute.
All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? Introduce myself. So I'm Pierce. Suppose I'll say a little bit about how I became a content creator. That might be a good idea. In 2019, I took a position at a company. I work. Is that crazy, right? And so there was this interaction that I had with a particular individual, and it did not go well. It was bad. So I like jokes. I tell jokes. Jokes are fun, right? A little bit of satire, a little bit of humor. And this individual had said something. We were talking about something work related. I don't even remember what it was. That's how insignificant this was. It was nothing too cray. And he said like it was like a minor disagreement over nothing. And he said, "Well, you just gotta have faith, Pierce." And I'm a cheeky guy. I like to say cheeky things. So I was like, "Nah, I don't think you gotta have faith. I don't have faith." In whatever work related thing it was. But and I kind of meant it a cheeky way, like kind of religious, like kind of a dual meaning type thing, And he knew that. He knew that. He knew what I was putting down. But I was just joking, I wasn't being serious. I'm a jokester. But apparently he took it very, very seriously, and he started screaming at me. So that wasn't cool. I didn't really say much back. I was like, wow, what's going on here? That's crazy. So that led me down the rabbit hole of like, what's going on here? What could I have done differently? What's should I debate him? And I was like looking up like, should I debate this person? And then I found Anthony's videos, and that was pretty cool. And then got
Anthony
married, had a
Magnabosco,
child.
right?
Yeah, Anthony Magnabosco. I should probably specify that. Um,
Street
which he
Epistemology,
is.
right? Yeah.
Street Epistemology. Yeah, he's not the person who created it, but he's the one who popularized it. So fast forward through a marriage and a child being born, I discovered nonviolent communication, and that's pretty cool. I like that. And then I'm creating content, and that's that. I don't know. What did I miss anything?
No, I mean, so that's what brought you into street epistemology was you got interested in it, and when you discovered street epistemology, it was you figured it was something you might find interest in doing and broadcasting to everyone rather than just maybe going and doing it for your own fun, being street epistemological for your own fun and own purposes. You wanted to become a content creator, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
It like I never actually talked to this individual. I never used street epistemology on this. Used it on them. I don't mean it like that, but I never had that conversation with this individual. And even though was kind of the whole reason why I got into it, right? It really wasn't. It was about that initially, but really it was more about just like, hey, there's this better way, and I wanna share this with people, right? That's
Mm,
really what it was about.
mm, mm. Interesting. So how's it been going, do you think?
Uh, it, it's I'm not sure. It's a difficult thing to measure. I can point to certain individuals and say, look at this guy. It's he thought it was great, and he's telling me like uh, that this changed the way that he thinks and for the better, right? And I can look to another example and be like, okay, this person found some super value there and they're able to communicate better, right? So I can pick out these like individuals. Um, what like percentage of the overall people who watch and who I talk to who get these benefits from it? I don't know. I don't I haven't figured out a way to measure that, but I know there's a lot of people who are also look at it and they don't like it. That they're almost in opposition to it. Um, so it's I don't know. I don't know how ultimately I don't know.
Hmm, hmm. Do you set yourself standards? Like, is it disappointing, or like I guess that's my question. Are you meeting your own goals? Like, if I can give you an example, this has been something that's been culminating for a while with me is to do some other form of engagement, and I think street epistemology is interesting. I use it or look at it like any other tool. Um, So I guess my biggest thing was getting over one, being self-conscious of what people might think, might interpret, might hear, might what I'm presenting, and people being angry over what I'm presenting, and all those things that go through our heads when we're being self-conscious about being putting ourselves out there, if you will. So that was a real big hurdle for me, and generally I end up just doing it, which is what I'm doing here. I'm fumbling through it. It's not going to be the greatest starting off, but I hope it develops into something. Do you hold yourself to standards? Like, are you satisfied or disappointed with your efforts so far? Are you, do you think you're going to continue doing it? Are you doing it for your own sole purposes? A lot of questions there, but go ahead.
A whole lot of questions. Let's see if I can remember any of them. Um, you asked like what is my standard? Uh, like
Let
what
me
is my
let me
goal? Is that kind of like what you're?
Yeah, let me break down the questions a little bit more. Like, are you disappointed?
Um, I don't. I don't think I would. No, I wouldn't say I'm disappointed. No.
Hmm.
I mean,
Are you happy
let me
with
let me
what you're
retract that for
doing?
a moment. I'm happy with the content. I don't know if I'm so happy with always the reception or the effect that it might have.
Mm-mm. Interesting.
I would like the reception and the effect to be like if someone uh, comes across my content and they weren't familiar with communication, they haven't like read books on communication, haven't studied it, and this individual comes across my content. What I would like the reaction to be would be like, hmm, there's something special about this conversation. And hopefully they'll be able to pick up on what that is. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just be like, I can't put my thumb on it, but there's something's working well here. I want them to have that impression, like something these individuals are actually communicating rather than just bickering back and forth or just arguing, you know.
Mm.
So I would like them to be one of the reactions. And furthermore, I would like them to see value in trying to do that for themselves.
Mm. So maybe be more critical in conversation is what you're getting at, like recognizing the ability to not necessarily take a judgment in something, but use sort of a more logical approach to why we believe certain things. Of course, that's epistemology in a nutshell, right? Why do we know? Why do we believe we know what we know? Um,
Absolutely, yes, but I wouldn't limit it to just that. I would also include like if if you're having a conversation with someone and you recognize that it's not a like logical oriented conversation that this other person is desiring to have, if it's a very emotional fueled conversation that they're wanting to have, the ability to recognize that and hopefully either disengage if you don't want to have that conversation. Nobody should have to be forced into a conversation they don't want to have, or recognize that and be willing to switch to having that conversation.
mm, mm. So what about like there's a huge spectrum of how people interpret different things, right? Whenever we're talking about a particular topic, let's just pick a random one, God. For
Okay.
instance, people are divided on that. So you present information of like, I watched one of your shows and there was, well, I guess a student or someone you encountered along the way, and they were talking about their God beliefs, and um, people are going to interpret that generally a number of ways. Some people are going to be like, yeah, God, and some people are going to be like, no, God, and then anywhere in between there. Does that concern you that there's maybe necessarily information out there that might be taken wrong and um, not presented in a way that you'd like? The controversy stuff. The controversy stuff is always hard unless you're just taking a raw approach and just having a conversation. That's kind of why I try to avoid the interview style, because I'm not really getting in anything. I really just want to talk. But at the same time, like, I have these same strong feelings about these conversations, like who I'm going to be involved with and what kind of information they present and how does that reflect upon me. Do you have all those same thoughts? Are they concerns of yours? Nebulous questions, too much
Let me
maybe?
try to let me. No, it's not too much. I'm trying to understand it. So let me repeat back what I think you're asking, and then we'll go from there. So I think you're describing these in groups and out groups, right? So believers in God, non-believers in God, and these groups will watch the content, and they will uh, draw something from it, make inferences, make determinations about what I think, about what my conversation partner thinks, stuff like that. And you're asking if that is a concern of mine?
Yeah, like, you and I have talked about some of this stuff, and what I'm trying to do is not cross the boundary of things we've already talked about that maybe I don't want to divulge um, so I'm trying to reach meta topics about this type of engagement, because I too
Mhm.
have some of these same concerns, some of these same problems, being miscategorized by people, misunderstood, the toxicity that might come along with it if I'm misunderstood by presenting people that, m- you know, maybe shouldn't be platformed. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Can you
Yeah,
derive a
I
question
see
from
what you're
that? I'm
saying.
sorry for my ADHD brain.
I got you. Yeah, I understand the question. I, it's not. I'm not too concerned about it. I think there might be instances where I would be concerned. Trying to figure out. I have the abstract version in my brain. I have to assign words to it. Uh, like I think if I were to have this concern, I I don't think I would. I don't think I'd be able to make that content.
Mm.
I think that content, I'd have to just not make it. And I think that's a losing strategy for just figuring stuff out as humans, right? I think that the one way that I think ensures that that there's the worst outcome for everyone most of the time, not necessarily all the time. But I think the worst way to get the way to get to the worst outcome in many circumstances is to not have the conversation. I think not having the conversation is almost always worse than having the conversation.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of with you. I'm hovering around in that area. I want, and I have people in all kinds of camps, right? Camps on all sides of issues, where some of them don't like the people that I engage with because they are controversial to those other people, and it's all that grouping that you we were talking about.
Mhm.
And it gets me down. So maybe we can dig into this problem. I'll ask you a sort of trying. I've been trying to curate this question, to present it in a way that's meta enough, but can that we can dig into it. And it is like, what's fair, in my opinion. Let's set up a spectrum here of, is it is it fair for someone to hold a view of a thing in the world, a view on life, a view on morals, that has zero empirical basis, and we have to allow them because that's fair? Or is it fair, more fair maybe, for people to be on the empirical side, and it's only fair because this is the divide that I see, is some people stand on the side of empiricism, what the science says, what the data says, and then there's degrees of people who start to abandon science at various degrees. I brought up an example to someone earlier of I know people particularly who generally follow most of what science says, but all the way up till, say, for instance, COVID vaccines, not even vaccines in general, just give up on the science behind COVID vaccines and assign that to some conspiracy and say, no, COVID vaccines are just bad. They're part of the industrial, you know, industrial profit center, whatever, you know, trying to take advantage of people with money and just pushing vaccines that aren't useful on people. So I guess I want to ask you, what do you feel about that spectrum? Should people just be able to hold their views, period, no matter what empirical evidence backs it up, or do we need or have to have empirical evidence behind it, or somewhere in between? What do you think?
So I would break it down into two separate categories here. One category would be what you can observe. So this would be a truth claim. So I'd like to present an example. This will help illustrate it better. So let's say somebody has a non-truth claim. This will be a normative claim that you should take a blue pill, this blue pill, because it'll make you super intelligent, right? But also one of the side effects is you'll pretty much lose all your emotions, but you'll be super intelligent. The normative claim might be you should take this because it's going to make you smart, right? Um, so that would be the normative claim. The truth claims in there would be the pill makes you smart, so you can examine that. And I think you should only use empirical evidence to get to that truth claim, right? That this pill makes you smart. Or it might be the claim that this pill takes away your emotion, right? So when it comes down to the normative claim of if you should take it or if you should not take it, that's where I'm not sure the truth claims can inform that, right? Like you should know what it's going to do to your body. You should have that information. But then whether or not you should take it, I don't think science can answer that question. I think that comes from an emotion. I lost you. Did my headset die? Can anybody else hear him?
Hello? Hello?
I can hear you now.
I muted myself. I'm a dummy. All right, so let's take that to the extreme case then. I mean, I guess if it's purely a normative claim, then God exists in someone's eyes, and they can just claim that and keep that claim. And even if God informs them that, say, slavery is good, or you know, there's only man and woman who should be married, whatever, you know, all those things that you can pull out of the hat, the hat trick of what we justify through God, religion, Bible, theology, whatever you want to call it. I think I hear what you're saying is there is like evidence, empiricism, truth, whatever, you know, truth claims, whatever you want to call that, that they weigh, they're not unimportant. But then for someone to actually accept that truth claim is up to them. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, ultimately that is the case, but if your goal is to believe true things, if that's what you want to do, then you should really just use the empirical evidence to get to your confidence in, you know, any truth claim, any observation.
I guess I don't know where to go from that.
Do you have a normative claim that you would like to talk about? Like I can use it as an example, and I can walk you through what I think about how people arrive there.
I mean, I'm sure we could come up with a million examples. Yeah, I guess, and I guess what it ultimately comes down for me is like I have my position on those things. Like I know I'm an empiricist. You know, Whatever we gather empirically through observation, through science, through rigorous process is what we know the best. And we should live based on what we know the best. And only if there's things that are outside what we know the best that we have no choice in making those decisions, we should use that stuff to make the best decisions to predict what to do with those things, in a sense. It sounds to me like
I'm on board.
Yeah. So, um, and I guess it comes down to a choice, right? It's like I choose to believe those things, and I can't in my own head justify that someone else has to abide by the same rules and laws to come to their views and that they do, right? But this ultimately seems to be what it comes down to, say, for instance, when we have combatants between two people, right? Some people might be on the side of what pure empiricism says about a thing, and what conclusions we either derive or don't derive from those things. And then other people are sort of looser in that realm because maybe they just don't know. Maybe they don't know enough. Maybe they don't have enough empirical evidence related or regarding to it. Maybe they've been brought up in a community or environment that doesn't hold empiricism to the highest regard, or questions it, or brings up conspiracy, or starts to poke holes in why we shouldn't trust science. We shouldn't trust things like psychology. That's usually some of the first ones to be broken down because they're not hard sciences. They're very, human behavior is a hard thing to track. I guess I'm just trying to talk about that. Hey, Duck, you wanted to come up here. If you want, I'll let you come up and ask a question if you want. Is that okay, Pierce?
Yeah, that's fine.
Hey, what's up? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I can hear you.
Cool. I have an overhand question. I hope I can ask it. It's not an underhand question. So I'm curious if we're talking about like epistemology or truth or belief, like imagining I'm an atheist, but imagining I just deconverted, or like I got a job, I do all this stuff. Where exactly does like experience or something intersect with like an epistemology? Right? Does it take me like being, does me being comfortable about CERN producing sort of this like foundational knowledge, like is that relevant for epistemology, or are those like two totally separate things?
Do you want to take that, Pierce? I have my own personal opinions, but yeah, I'd rather hear from you.
Sure. Okay, so experience and how that relates to what I'm assuming like a sound epistemology.
Yep.
I think it depends on the experience. So, like, let's say there's an individual who has been following like what's it called? What's that medicine called that they do dilute it down to almost like one atom, and then they ingest it, and it's supposed to do some cure. There's a special name for that.
LSD, mescaline.
No, like the stuff I think these. Are you talking about like the stuff they sell at like Whole Foods and stuff?
Yeah. Yes, homeopathy. So I think someone could have a lot of experience with that. Yeah, they could have a lot of experience with that, and use it all the time. Read up on information loosely that they find on websites, right? And they could have all this experience, but what good was that experience if it's not really rooted in anything that's really, what's the right word, empirical, right? If it's all subjective experience, right? If it's like, well, I took this and then I felt better. Well, how do you know it was that? And you weren't recovering already, right? So it depends what you mean by experience. If that's what you mean, if that's the experience, I would say that's not gonna be good. That's not gonna lead you to a sound epistemology. If you had experience as if you were studying a particular field, like in the field working with it, and running, robust studies, I'd say that experience would probably be very good.
Yeah, so like with the homeopathy example, even if I'm like imagining in this world I'm starting almost as like a Kantian or something. So my beingness and stuff is like that stuff's super important for me or something like this. Um, but like at some day I don't get to escape. I don't get to believe my way out of like fundamental brain chemistry and like cellular biology because I'm basically in this case, paying, 50, $60 for a thing of water, which like, so that's not, so that can't be true ever.
Hmm.
Is that,
Duck,
I'm like asking, I know I sound like I'm stating, but I'm like, I think I'm asking something there. I don't know.
right, Duck, I
I don't
think,
know.
are you asking like what, like, first of all, what is a sound basis for an epistemology? Is that what you're asking? Oh, you're muted. I don't know.
Uh, yeah, yeah. So like, if like I'm hearing like a sound basis or something like this, and so, like, so like okay, another way that I could say this is if my like let's say the set of beliefs that I had um for um for homeopathy in this case or something, homeopathy or maybe like a tangential experimental school of evolution or something like this. And I had 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever it was, whatever the actual number was that I have um uh of like beliefs in there. Like I'm wondering if there's ever a way to have a sound epistemology about my experiential beliefs that I have now.
Do you want to take that, Pierce, or do you want me to go and let you have some time to think?
I don't think I understand the question. So why don't you go ahead and answer, and we'll see if I can figure out the question by that.
Yeah, I'm not certain. Hey, Duck, I'm going to kick you back down there for a little bit. I'm not certain exactly either, but I'm going to, all I have is, well, actually, I do have it did spawn some questions out of that for me. Like for you, have you ever thought about what your epistemology is? Like, what's your understanding of where knowledge starts, at least from your own perspective? Where does it start? Where, like, you've heard of the cogito ergo sum, which is I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am. A lot of people use this as a sound basis for starting to build justified truth belief and blah blah blah. Correspondence theory of truth, all that kind of stuff. What I don't particularly subscribe to the cogito as my epistemological foundation. So, does that make sense to you? And what would you think your foundation is?
Sure. Like it's interesting. You brought up the I'm at a loss for words.
Cogito?
Yeah, I can't say that word.
I can't either. I can't.
You just did. Uh, anyway, it reminded me of like, are we in a simulation? Are we in the Matrix? That if we're in the Matrix, if we're not in the Matrix, I don't really care. I don't know. Who knows? But like apparently we're here having an experience. I'm having an experience, right? I'm talking to you. Whether or not I'm actually human or digits on a solid state drive, it is what it is. But getting over that hurdle, I think I take a very similar approach to you. I tend to use empiricism. Imperial. I've never said that word. I just realized I've never empiricism. Yeah, I very rarely use that word. Yeah, empirical evidence. Yeah, I tend to take that approach for any truth claims. So any sentence that is like this is or this is not. So it would be through empirical evidence, which I like to say observation is a another way to say empirical sometimes. It's not necessarily me doing the observation, but somebody's doing the observation. Somebody's taking a measurement. And then, of course, there's a level of trust and gets a little grainy in that
Right.
department.
Absolutely.
And then what separates the truth bucket. So you got a bucket of truth, and then you got a normative claim bucket. The truth claim bucket is going to inform the normative claim bucket, but there's also a third bucket, which I didn't tell you about yet. That's the goal bucket. So it's like, what do I want to see out of what do I want to see out of the world around me, right? And I think that goal bucket is informed by the emotion bucket. So there's another bucket, four buckets we got. So the goals are informed by the emotions, and then the strategy. There's a strategy bucket. How the ultimate, that's the normative claim. That's what we should do. So the normative claim is informed by the truth bucket, which is also helped decided by the goal bucket, or the strategy is informed by the goal. So I painted a really nasty web right there, and hopefully that made sense. Did you pick up what I put down?
Yeah, I think I mean, I get you. It's very we're speaking very meta, very kind of high level at the moment. And that's I think I wish I had my buddy Thomas here to help me through some philosophy. I'll bumble my way through it as best I can. So I'm hearing that you do want to claim that you're an empiricist, like you like to hold empirical evidence to the heaviest weight. I think I'm hearing you say, and then beyond what we
Yeah.
don't know empirically, obviously we have to then start making normative claims based on our best belief, guess, understanding, yada yada. Does that make sense?
It may have lost me. What we don't know empirically. So when you said that, you meant
So a good example is we know some correlations of human behavior through psychology, but we can't predict human behavior. Right? The prediction would be some places where we don't empirically have enough information to inform what the actual outcome would be. Right?
I would consider that still to be a truth claim, perhaps a predictive truth claim, I think.
Sure.
And
with varying degrees of confidence,
that
right?
Yeah, so I would still say we should use empirical evidence. However, we might not get to 100%, 90%, 80%. We might be less confident in making those predictions, right?
Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, I'm tempted to want to talk about my epistemology, but I'm going to resist that tempt. I would rather keep this focused on you. That's what we're here for. I think it's not about me. So I guess what I'm trying to do is, just attack meta problems that I think I see regularly. When I first got on Discord a year or so, maybe a little bit more back, it was very toxic and combative, it seemed. And it wasn't necessarily the toxicity or combativeness that changed, it's how I handle it. Right? But sitting over the top of everybody else and where they're taking their own understanding of things and making assertions, and I guess Duck is probably talking too, so maybe he wants to speak again. But where we make claims about things and where other people make claims about things is nebulous. About truths. Sorry, I'm being nebulous too. Truth claims, if you will. And that can cause a lot of toxicity in this realm of online and presenting information. And it can cause us to be misunderstood. And sometimes we feel misunderstood, I think. I guess I also wanted to give you a bit of a platform to maybe clear your own air, because I think, what I've met of you and discovered of you, you seem like a pretty good guy, wanting to do good things, have good discussions with people. And just talk through some of that, from the human side, from the human aspect, and Um, yeah, I don't really want to keep conversation superficial. That's just not the person that I am. But and it's hard for me to stay meta about these topics. Did you think that you covered like what your intentions are? With your efforts, did you think that you covered that well enough, or did you want to talk any more about that?
I can talk a little bit more about it. Yeah. Like, I firmly think that if we as people are able to have genuine conversation and be open, be honest, and genuinely and curiously genuinely ask thoughtful questions to one another in a way that isn't combative, that is explorative. I think that we'll probably be able to figure a lot of stuff out. You know, I think we'll be able to figure out strategies that will fulfill our goals. And I think a lot of our goals collide. I think that most people want what's best for one another, right? In like a in a well-being sense. I mean, I could be wrong about that.
Mm.
Um, but generally speaking to people, that's what I've found. And I think talking about it in a productive way, in a way that isn't combative and I don't even have words like vitriolic. Um, I think that'll do a lot of good. I think that will go a long way to figuring out what these best strategies are.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, one thing I always try. It hurts me. It pains me to see when people conflict and can't get along. But I thought maybe we might try an experiment if you're up for it.
Sure.
You're starting to know me well enough. Why don't do you think you can find a particular topic that you might feel strongly about that I might feel differently about, without like
Mm,
feeling threatened or that I'm going to attack you? Because I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm able to take these things and talk through them, but it would be interesting to see where I feel about where the empiricism might lie and what answers that informs versus where you might think. Does that make
mm,
sense? And we don't have to pick
sure.
something currently topical like a lot of the trans LGBTQ God. We don't have to. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything controversial like that. But I mean, I don't know about this about you. Are you a God-fearing person?
No.
You're not. Okay. So then, talking about things like bringing the Bible back into the school, we'd probably agree. Like that's you know maybe open for schools that are for that, and if they won't choose, that's cool, but in public schools maybe not, or things like that. So I'm thinking of a topic like that where we might be able to kind of friendly disagree. And
Sure.
um,
What about uh what about infant circumcision? What are your thoughts on that?
hmm, interesting, that's a good one. Infant circumcision, I think circumcision is most likely useless, but that's a good one because we still do it medically. And the
Hmm.
medical industry seems to not want to come out and overtly say this is a useless practice. Or it isn't and actually, let me rephrase that. I see it also as possibly a useful practice in the sense of it's kind of like removing fluoride from, well, that might be another one because I think I've heard you talk about this before, but removing fluoride from water sources, right? Even though I'm against that. I think we should keep fluoride in water sources, even though it's potentially toxic in certain concentrations, yada, yada, yada. Then you learn about trace elements and stuff like that. Um, but when we've done this in places and removed fluoride from the water, children have had increased cavities, infections, problems, yada yada yada, pretty much empirically in most of, if not all, the instances where we've tried this, like in Calgary, Canada, for instance. So let's wrap this back around to circumcision. I think circumcision is around that same thing. We have a lot of social taboos where our private parts aren't really talked about fully, and we're not really given an instruction manual on how to manage them and clean them properly. And probably if people learned to clean their junk properly on the male side, on the penis side, we'd probably have less infections and maybe might not need circumcisions, minus things like phimosis, where the foreskin is obstructive to the function of the penis, So that's where I lie. I lie where it's probably medically not necessary, but it might be one of those things that we do for the greater good right now. I'm not sure. I'm not
Interesting.
certain. Mutilations happen there too, sometimes, but granted, these things are small percentages. So otherwise, I think it would be an overt medical concern. But anyways, let's hear where you stand on circumcision.
I take a much more confident stance, and I would say that circumcision of the male variety, well, actually both really, should not occur in infancy unless there is a medical necessity. So, like what you described earlier.
Phimosis, for instance, yeah, that's one of the popular ones to talk about, where the foreskin is obstructive to the function.
Yes.
I mean, I think
and that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a hard one for us. Maybe we can connect on fluoride.
Okay.
Because I think
Sure.
I'm in the same camp where I don't think it's necessary. I think, I think we do it for the greater good, but it's also got its problems that come along with it, and I'm not certain. We know well enough because of the biases that still exist in medicine regarding religion, choice, and that choice is one of those areas where it's like, what's fair? Do we do what's fair because it's empirical, or do we do what's fair because they want to choose it? That brings back, that wraps it around to that whole thing about what's fair, when it comes to views on things. So, but what about fluoride? Where are you with fluoride? I think I heard you say before that you think fluoride should come out of water sources.
Not necessarily come out completely, but I do think it should be reduced to a level in which a child, baby, toddler, whatever word you want to describe this age, when they start drinking water, that it will be at a safe level for them. And I believe in some places in the world, United States included, that these levels are a little bit too high for that particular demographic with that body weight.
Unfortunately, that's not a strong subject of mine, so I don't have a lot of empirical evidence around that at the moment. But I have seen the studies regarding when we do take fluoride out of public water, and it generally has some pretty bad actions. And I've heard people say, like, well, we can always use toothpaste, and I'm like, okay, but we're not considering people who can't even afford toothpaste. They're literally getting their tooth care through the public water system only. That's a level of entitlement that I think people have. Like, they just think to these things, well, these are really cheap to me and we do them. Why can't everybody else do them? Well, why can't everybody have medical care too? I mean,
Yeah, this kind of comes down to, so I think we have the same goal here, right? We want people to be healthy, right? With regards to the fluoride in water. We want people to be healthy, and we are trying to figure out the best strategy to accomplish that, right? There's some truth claims, right, behind this. Like, is this level of fluoride safe for this demographic, right? For this demographic, right? That's an underlying truth claim. If the fluoride levels that we currently have are safe for every single demographic, then we wouldn't really need to have this conversation about strategy, because we could just leave it in there and it wouldn't matter, right? But if that truth claim is, like, if it is unsafe for this particular demographic that I described, then we have to talk about strategy. What do we do about that? And I think that's just as valuable as of conversation as the truth claim itself.
Okay, sure. It's orders of magnitude though, right? Like because we see this in this specific area, there's an overt um, difference in levels of fluoride in water, and that could have an effect on a local community. We shouldn't take that as, like you said, let's remove fluoride from the water. We should say, hey, why is more fluoride getting into this particular water source? Where it's becoming levels that are unsafe. So it's
Yeah.
orders of magnitude of that data, um, I would say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's more about, I mean, at least from what I understand, fluoride is controlled pretty accurately. So there's usually not an extra amount. It's usually the designated amount. Just,
Or
okay.
yeah, what
Maybe
they
you
call
were,
trace
I thought you
amounts.
were, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, which they
Yeah.
call trace amounts, which aren't near levels that are generally harmful to people. But yeah, we know things aren't necessarily always equal. Um,
And yeah, with that being said, if this demographic that I described, if it did have negative neurological effects, we have to. Would you mind if we accepted that just as truth? And you don't have to accept it personally as truth, but for the sake of the conversation, um, would you mind if we tentatively agreed on that for a moment so I can talk about strategy? Would that be okay?
so we're tentatively agreeing that there's some sub-community that's being affected by a higher concentration of fluoride, essentially, is what you're
Yes.
saying, right? Sure.
Right.
Yeah, because
Right.
it probably is
Okay.
happening somewhere.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So with regards to strategy, one strategy would be to remove all fluoride, right? That's going to have a negative effect on other people, right? And we don't want that. You don't want that. I don't want that. Okay. So maybe that's on the table. Perhaps the strategy would be to remove it and supply them with other means to get fluoride to their teeth, whether that be giving them toothpaste, whatever. That could be a packaged strategy where everybody's needs are met here, everybody's taken care of. What other strategies do we have? We could leave it in. We could leave fluoride at the current level, whatever level that might be, and advise this demographic to not drink the water and to drink bottled water or from a well water or whatever other water source that they might have.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I see what
Yeah, I
you're
think those are
saying.
the main.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying, and yeah, I'm not against taking local action when we see that there's an imbalance somewhere. That's not something I'm averse to. Um, I would definitely, yeah, I would. It's really on the balance of taking all fluoride out of all water. I think would be a bad thing. Until we get
Yeah.
to a point maybe where everybody can have quality tooth care that isn't provided by just our cheap water system. That might make sense. But anyways, hey, I just want
I
to
think it
jump
makes
in here
sense to
real
do that.
quick.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to jump in here real quick. It's been almost an hour now. We're coming on the 6 o'clock mark. I want to make sure I'm conscious of your time. Do you have a hard cutoff or anything?
I would say in one more additional hour, that would be a hard cutoff for me.
Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, I could go for a little bit longer. I think I think we've hit a closing point at least, unless you feel like there's more to discuss there. This has been a little hectic for me today. I apologize. I'm in a bad place because I'm trying to get this set up. I tried to fight to get my monitor active today, and that was a miserable failure. So I'm like, I tried streaming in one system first, and that didn't work. So I tried another one, and that didn't work. And then finally, I got on with Don, which was awesome. And Don helped me through a lot of stuff. And now I have at least the ability to present this. So it's been a heck of a day. I need to hone my interview and discussion skills, make sure, be clear, more sound of mind. So I apologize to the audience if this has been a little bit hectic today. I haven't paid attention to the chat on YouTube at all. I will get better at those things, I promise you. When I have a second monitor set up and I can look at those things and manage everything and maybe step away from the conversation and maybe let other people talk. But I appreciate everybody here listening in. And I wanted to, if you're okay, unless you have something else you want to talk about, I wanted to see if anybody wanted to come up and ask any other questions.
Yeah, that's fine. I think we hit a good stopping point at the end of fluoride there.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Does anybody down below want to come up or anybody on YouTube, my Discord link is in my YouTube profile, the description. So you can just click there, come in, create an account, join my server, pop in here into the stage. And, for future events, there's going to be more. I'm going to do more of these. I already have a few other people lined up to start doing more, maybe possibly a regular morning show, which would be cool. So I'm working and building, and I'm trying. I'll try and get better for everyone. That's all I can say. But Don, you want to come up? James, you want to come up? Kyle, you want to come up? Casey, you want to come up? Anybody want to come up and ask questions, talk? Are you okay if anyone comes up at this point?
Yeah, it's fine.
If not, then maybe we can find something else to talk about, or if you just want to cut it off here.
Yeah. There's one thing that's been on my mind today specifically, actually, and you brought it up right before we started streaming here. So I didn't say anything, obviously, because I wanted to not have that conversation then. But you talked about community building, and I think that is really, really interesting. I think it's really important. At the same time, I think it's something that has to be done with care. I think that if it's not done with care, things can turn out. What's the right way to word this? Like, there can be unintended consequences with that community building, or maybe intended consequences. I guess it depends on what your goal is.
Kyle
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Kyle asked they want to know what care looks like.
Care. I must have said care somewhere in there. I feel like I need the context. Care. I would say it would be desire.
You said it should be done with care.
Handled with care.
Okay.
With care. That context is different than what I was gonna define. Okay. Handle with care. Thoughtfulness might be another synonym. Thoughtfulness. Yeah, like doing it in a way that doesn't turn. I'm kind of being obtuse, but maybe I'll be a little bit frank here. Doing it in a way that doesn't create an us versus them dynamic. I think that's something that humans do, all humans, including me, right? It's something that we do probably because of evolution, our biology, yada yada yada, right? I think that's something that probably was very beneficial to us before we became modern humans, right? I think trusting our other tribe members that we associate with was probably very beneficial for survival. With how we exist today as humans, I think it can be something that gets in the way of figuring out strategies that protect or establish well-being for everybody, right? I think it can turn having these like insulated groups that create this us versus them dynamic can turn the mute button on to everybody outside of that group. And I think that's a disservice to figuring out the best strategy.
Interesting. So I guess that's what I was trying to do with my example earlier, was I was trying to outgroup you. I was trying to make a purposeful effort to outgroup you on purpose because I struggle with the same things, man. I I agree with you that this grouping behavior, this coming together on like ideas, has its bonuses, it has its benefits, but it also has its negatives. In
Yeah.
just the way that people tend to do things like guilt by association, you haven't done anything necessarily, but you associate with people who do these things, so therefore I'm going to categorize you in the same category and without even giving you a chance.
Yeah.
And yeah, it spawns off all these other malignant behaviors. I don't know how to manage it though, because if you ask yourself simple questions like, eventually everyone's going to be, and this is why I just like to categorize it as agreement and disagreement rather than grouping and outgrouping and tribalism. I think we're
Hmm.
just going to, I just pragmatically accept that we're going to agree and disagree on things, period. Often what you find is someone's like, hey, we found something, we talked and we had some agreements, right? And now we're friends. And a couple months later, somebody says something that they didn't quite expect, and now all of a sudden they're fighting where they were best friends for the last 3 months, because they didn't know them fully. You know what I mean? And then you can,
Yeah.
Casey said, genuine trust rests on our ability to tolerate what we don't know about the other, by Esther Perel. Um, that's a really hard thing to navigate, I think. And I think it's in that realm of ideal things. Ideally, yeah, I'd love everybody to sing Kumbaya, get along, smoke weed, whatever it is they have to do to, you know, to be happy and go lucky with each other. But we know we're going to have differences, and sometimes those differences define the difference between lots of people getting harmed by a belief. You know what I mean? So that's where the vitriol
Yeah.
comes in. The vitriol comes in because people get harmed by having a belief, and now the question is now, should I continue to be nice and civil with this person because they hold a belief? They're not being aggressive about it. They're not beating down my door with it, but they hold a belief that perpetuates a thing that hurts people.
You may have found a way to outgroup me here. So yeah, so I think in terms of strategy, right? So let's say you do run into this individual and they're holding these beliefs, and people with these beliefs advocate for things that will harm people. Okay. Um, if there's two approaches you can take. You can be nice and you can talk civilly with the person, maybe inquire about it, right? Um, Option B would be to hammer them, absolutely nail them to the wall, right? Just psycho mode, right? Which is more likely to uh, persuade them out of that belief? Is being curious, asking curious questions that get down to deeper layers, non-confrontationally, or is nailing them to the wall going to get you there? I
I,
tend to think the first option will do a better job.
Let me clarify. I don't think we've outgrouped each other.
Okay.
I think we
Okay.
probably think
We
very
agree.
similarly, but there may be some differences there. But I came across an example at one point in time, and it's obviously hyperbole, and it's going to bring up the thing that everybody's like, "Oh God, he's going to bring Hitler and not the Nazis into it," whatever. But I like to think of the fact that we're not going to be nice and hold hands and accept everybody's views to stop Hitler from doing what he does. There's going to be a time where force has to be used. There's going to be a time where it's just like the whole thing about free speech, right? Free speech is a misnomer, in my opinion. There's no such thing. People who want to claim free speech, in my opinion, are claiming just what they want to do is be bigoted. Essentially hold their bigoted, racist, non-scientific, whatever views. Now, I'm not saying that's overtly true. There's obviously degrees there where people are less and more harmful in the things that they believe. But it's obvious that at some point in time, if nothing else, you have to defend yourself physically and violently, and sometimes that physical violence is in opposition. It's a, and I struggle with a lot of those things. So I'm not saying there's an answer there, but I'm going to let Casey up here because they may help me get out of this tailspin that I'm in at the moment. So.
Well, I'm still kind of trying to think through what I'm thinking. I guess because, to that example of if somebody's promoting harmful views, and I've been thinking lately about even the example of someone that says that insulting other people can be okay. We can take it a step back from like the overtly physically violent, because even just the way that we talk to each other can be harmful. So I think I'm kind of, like leaning in with Pierce's observations there, that if we want to change minds, if that's the goal, then it can be helpful to try to be helpful. But I think there is a point where if somebody is demonstrating that they're not listening to you, they're not open to being civil, then that's when we protect ourselves. And that might mean that we fight against them. That might be stepping away. Does that kind of help?
Pierce, I
You're
think
muted.
that if I can... Oh, I'm muted?
You're good. You're good. You're good. You're not. There's a delay between the video and the audio. I'm sorry.
No worries. But I think that goes... Do you mind me bringing up the whole manufacturing enemies thing?
Oh, sure.
Because I think that goes hand in hand with manufacturing enemies in a sense, along the lines of like, we always have these preconceived notions and biases once we've met someone, once we've had a interaction and had to start to make some judgments. We don't generally consider that they might have changed. They still have the capacity to change their ideas. And like you said, break it down to rationale. Like, if we're just immediately and initially combative with him or them, the only thing we can expect back most likely is them to shut down, run away, or be combative back with us. I mean, I'm all for that. I'm all for the sort of Daryl Davis approach, and engaging with people like that. But I guess what I was trying to get at is that is the hyperbole which I was bringing out of, like Casey said also, like, and I think you don't disagree, like sometimes we have to be protective. So if we feel like lots of people are being hurt by the things that are being said, being spread, being whatever, we have to take action in order to protect them because, or at least I think so. I would want to. That's part of the negotiation, right? I'm okay with people saying things as long as they're not hurting swaths and masses of amounts of people, Again, a nebulous, hard thing to judge. So I'm not saying there's any hard, fast rules there of what that line is. But I think that does get around to the point of sometimes we have to, number one, protect, number two, defend, number three, sometimes even offense is justified, I think. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think it would be beneficial for me to repeat back what I think I heard.
Sure.
Should have been writing notes.
Shout out to James.
I got a pen too.
That's all right. Look, I'm not trying to keep this rigid or, that's another thing about me is I veer away from structure and organization and planning. I'm just not that kind of person. So I'm sorry. Anyways, continue your
It's
thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. I want to make sure the message went from you to me accurately and I didn't misunderstand.
Got it.
So I think what you're saying is that when it comes to people expressing what they believe, that sometimes there can be a level of harm to certain individuals of some sort. And depending on the degree of harm maybe. I'm assuming, I think, that what you do in response to that will vary. And it might be a cordial conversation. It might be nothing, might be to ignore it. It might be to like, yeah, shoot shots, aggressively debate maybe. It might be to nail them to the wall.
I just thought of a really good example, and one that won't cross any I don't think will cross any boundaries, because I don't think we've ever talked about Richard Dawkins. But Richard Dawkins, a well-renowned evolutionary biologist, massive contributions to science, biology, evolutionary biology, all that stuff. Really brilliant guy. Has some pretty, in my opinion, bad biological determinist views about sex and gender and such. So my example would be, I would love to have Richard Dawkins, if I could ever think about it, I would love to have him here interviewing him. Like, I would feel that as a privilege. But when he was done, and if we crossed or broached that topic of biological determinism, in which I think he's wrong, and I think the reason why I think he's wrong is because empirical evidence backs it up. He's one of those people that I described before of, like, I believe in all this empirical evidence up until COVID vaccines. COVID vaccines are bullshit. It's the same thing. It's like, I believe all this empiricism all the way up until we've only got two genders, or sex is a binary. Or I don't want to say things that Richard Dawkins isn't. I'm not trying to present that. I'm just giving that as an example. He's somewhere in that realm where he doesn't believe in those things, and like, people consider that, I think, in a sense, correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, anybody who knows for sure, but somewhat in the anti-trans camp. So I would, like, for me, if I ever had him on the show, I'd be like, yeah, this was awesome, this was great, but I really feel the need to do a follow-up here and say, this, and at least, if not live, contest him on those things, because he's a scientist. He'd probably be able to blow me out of the water with any kind of evidentiary proof. Maybe I could have somebody else along with me to check and balance him. Maybe I could go do research and follow up with a follow-up video. But I'm very cautious about platforming even that aspect of danger from such a renowned scientific figure, just because he's a renowned scientific figure. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think I understand what you're saying. Let me make sure. So I think you are saying, you used the example of Richard Dawkins, right? And if you were to have him on your show, that if that subject of gender were to come up, you would want to be extremely cautious.
Even challenge him live.
I think
if I
the
had
reason,
ability, yeah.
challenge him.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And the reason being, I might be stretching, maybe you didn't say this. You can tell me if I'm mistaken. I think what you're saying, the reason being, is that by what he says could persuade people to adopt what he believes. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, sure. Or just exacerbate, continue, perpetuate beliefs that cause harm to people in the LGBTQ communities. People who are looking for their own liberty from those types of oppressions. And there's the whole hammer and nail analogy of if a person has a hammer, everything becomes a nail. Well, I think Richard Dawkins in that case is a brilliant evolutionary biologist, but I don't think evolutionary biology can fully define the things in which he's making claims of. So he's using his hammer to hit something that's not necessarily a nail, if you will. You know what I mean? So I guess I'm just trying to make that. I'm trying to poke a little bit to know what what you feel about platforming misinformation, disinformation, things like that. It's a theme that we've touched on before, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like in your Richard Dawkins example, right? Um, you kind of said like he would blow you out of the water, right? Um, and I'm not sure exactly what you meant by that, but what I'm envisioning might happen, and this is me, uh, my own thoughts, not trying to repeat back what you said. I imagine that might look like him presenting his argument, presenting evidence A, evidence B, evidence C, evidence C, E, D, F, Z, right? Um, all in a very professional and quick manner, right? So you might not be able to keep up with every single little point that he's making or understand every single little point that he's making. So you may not be able to challenge every little tiny bit of information along the way. And your fear is that because you wouldn't be able to challenge every little thing that he might say, that what you were able to challenge wouldn't be sufficient in your standard um, to counteract the misinformation that you would be hearing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And actually,
Okay.
I think that's a great, like, so I have actually had this same exact conversation with somebody before about just like, for instance, debate. Like, you're in a debate with someone and they can win the debate over you, not because they're right, but because they know more about particular subjects than you do. So therefore they can stomp all over you with details. Even if they don't know the full details, they just know enough to beat you, right? Then you're being presented as being beaten online, which makes it seem real, which some people start to, well, then it will do the exact same things I talk about. It'll exacerbate, perpetuate the bad arguments, right? Because I'm not sufficient. I'm not capable. It doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means that I'm not the one to necessarily hold their feet to the fire. And by not having that capability, they're now being given a platform to present their ideas as true or better or winning or whatever you want to, whatever you want to call it. I think that's something I've heard before. So it's just interesting how that ties in with the notions of these truth claims versus feelings, if you will, I guess, normative claims.
Mm.
It all kind of comes together. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, the truth claims, obviously have an impact on the normative claims, obviously, as you described.
Right. What if someone has a monopoly on truth claims over you, but still doesn't necessarily have all the truth?
I'm not sure what you mean.
My brain is going awry here. I think I was just getting back to that whole like, who can do it better in the competition, and if someone wins, though they may not be right, is it good for us to platform people like that, and when maybe we don't have the sufficient capability to hold their feet to the fire and let them say things like that? I guess there are other alternate options, right? I could just agree with somebody like Richard Dawkins up front and say, hey, let's talk about evolutionary biology because that's what you know best. Let's not talk about gender because you really, you're not a specific gender studies person. You don't do medical science or research in particularly trans or gender studies, LGBTQ areas. You're not you're not a psychologist, you're not a psychiatrist, you don't hold all those skills. So therefore, just because you're a good evolutionary biologist doesn't mean we need to talk about stuff that you have feelings on outside of evolutionary biology. I guess that's another strategy that one could take in hosting that type of information. I don't know. What do you think about that? I just kind of came up with that just thinking through this, that it would be a good way to guard from platforming bad information is just to set up boundaries of what can be talked about, especially in my areas of expertise versus their areas of expertise,
Yeah, I mean that's fine. Like what you described obviously is
Yeah, I'm asking your opinion, by the
in my
way.
opinion,
I'm not asking for an
yeah.
answer. So,
Yeah, in my opinion, you talk to somebody about what they're an expert in. Yes, that's great. I think that's great.
well, what
If
about?
that was your question.
Well, the other point of is what if you're not an expert in it, and
Mm.
how comfortable are you at covering information that you may not be, that might be, number one, controversial. Evolutionary biology isn't necessarily really controversial in most cases. It's just reporting facts, talking about how things evolved
Yeah.
and what we can extract from that. But when it goes to the point of starting to make prescriptions about how humans should live, what they should be, what their bodies should be, what their brain says about how they should act, what biology says about how they should act, I don't know if that's a good place to draw a line or a distinction. I guess I'm bringing that up because I'm really cautious about doing this kind of stuff too, man. Look, I'm going to be if I keep doing this, I'm going to be involved with people who may be controversial, and I may not even know it. So I might end up accidentally platforming information that I don't want platformed. So I think this all goes around to the whole topic of how people disagree, and and what is right. What who's fair. Back to the whole who's fair argument. But anyways, you wanted to talk, so go ahead.
Thanks. So with regards to having someone like on your show, on my show, whoever, and they might have a particular view that might be harmful. If you were to debate this individual, and let's say they are an experienced debater, they kind of know how to debate very, very well. If you were to attempt to debate them, I think we both would have the prediction that you might not end up on top, right? So with that being said, I wouldn't recommend debating them, right? That's not something I would recommend.
Interesting.
What strategies do we have? We have debating. We're both agreeing that that's a bad strategy. Another strategy would be to not have them on. That's okay with me. I mean, talk to who you want to. That's fine. I think we agree that that might be a strategy, an okay strategy. Where we might disagree is on, exploring the either the epistemology or I'm not sure what to call it if it's a normative claim, because I don't really consider it an epistemology. I guess the goal, maybe the goal, the strategy. I think that can be done. I think it takes a certain amount of patience, right? Like it's not something that's easy. It's never easy.
Right, yeah.
And you won't be able to inquire about every little tiny thing that is said. No person can ever do that. You can't do that in a debate either. But I think there's tremendous value to uncovering those rocks, uncovering those goals, strategies, and epistemology. And if you can do that in a conversation, like the one that we're talking about, I think that's good. I like that.
Is that a strategy? Like, for instance, with the Richard Dawkins example, is that a strategy you might take? Is if you bring him on, he's controversial in an area, you might not talk about that area. You might talk about what he is a specialist in. Is that what I'm reading from what you just said? No.
No. No. I was going for like Richard Dawkins. If you did want to talk about gender, I think what you would want to do is, either concentrate on getting to either if you're talking about the truth claim part of it, you'd want to get to the epistemology. If you're talking about the normative claim part of it, either shift to the truth claim part or talk about the strategy or talk about the goal, and get down to like the heart of those two things or three things.
Is that for Pierce, Kyle? The question is, are there any changes you'd like to see if you give a magic wand, if you were given a magic wand? Changes regarding what?
Yeah, broadly.
Changes regarding like
I'll take $1 million.
How to engage with people in conversations. Is that what you're getting at, Kyle? Yes. Yes?
I think that was a yes to the other question you asked.
Yeah, I thought so too. With the last discussion.
Not sure exactly how to interpret that. Changes the interviewer could do, changes of the interviewee, changes of...
Like maybe if you detect a difference between the way somebody formulates their normative claims based on their epistemology or whatever, if you could wave a magic wand and they're controversial or they're wrong, maybe, would you maybe wave a magic wand and fix that? Or is that what you're asking, Kyle? But I'm going to let you have the mic now since you're up here.
No, actually, what I'm referring to is that with the last discussion that you guys are referencing, it caused a lot of changes, right? A lot of things transpired from that. And what I'm asking is, if given a magic wand, are there changes that Pierce would like to enact? Because it's been a domino effect. So how would he like it to be different?
I think I see what you're saying. Are you asking like if you could wave a magic wand to make things different moving forward? Like how would he make things different moving forward? Is that what you mean?
Sure, that, and in general, like just any changes he'd like to see or feel, I don't know, be a part of.
I think I would eliminate... This is weird to say, because it's like just part of people's psychology, I think. I would eliminate the urge to conform to your in-group. That's what I would change if I had the magic wand.
Actually, I like that answer because that brings it back to where we were before about in-grouping, out-grouping, tribalism, things like that. So yeah, go ahead, Kyle. I'm sorry if you want to clarify.
Are you talking about your in-group, Pierce?
Every in-group imaginable. The chess player in-group, the football watcher in-group, the cannabis smoker in-group. Yeah, everybody.
Like not have any in-group, out-group behavior, basically.
Yeah, like it's okay to have the groups, like, go watch the game with your boys, you know what I'm saying? But like that, you don't have to conform to their beliefs that NFL players shouldn't wear the Guardian caps to prevent concussions, Maybe try to figure that out on your own rather than, conform to what your buddies think.
Does that make sense, Kyle?
Logically, yes.
Yeah. Excuse me. Oh, man. So yeah, but then that goes back to the whole thing that we talked about originally, and I guess we'll try and wrap this up real soon here. But that we pragmatically understand that we just can't do anything about this in-group, out-group behavior. We can continue to try to combat it. We can continue to try and break down walls of how people group with each other or not, and why people, like I said, people sometimes get misunderstood and grouped in the wrong groups by mistake, by guilt by association, by, I'm in the same realm. Like I think we, and actually, Casey, you brought this up the other day, and it brought a tear to my eye because I was so proud to hear other people feel like me in those senses. Not that you don't, you're a very empathetic, nice person, so it makes sense, but we were talking about political topics, and everybody there is just like, oh, Trump's bad. Oh, no, Trump's good. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And this is all this same grouping behavior. It's like we can't get past all that just fighting to get down to the root of the issues of, to even decide, number one, what goals are before we can even start to draw conclusions from how we achieve those goals. Like, nobody can come to common goals, I think. That's another outgroup. It's like, or outgroups. It's like there's so many different goals. Each one of them is a group, and everybody joins into their group of their common goals. So I don't know what to do about that, man. What the heck do we do about that? I want to continue to fight it, but I at the same time have to accept that it exists. And I know I don't want to be around some people,
Well, I was given a magic wand, so
Sure. No, I wasn't calling you into question. I was just merely presenting more information.
That's fine.
So yeah.
Like, what is the solution? What's the strategy to overcome?
I don't know. I'm saying I don't know if there is.
I don't know either.
Yeah, I don't know if there is.
I'm saying the same thing you're saying.
Yeah, that is the human condition we are dealing with. If we had a solution to that problem, we'd probably solve 99.9, if not all, the problems in the world, because, we wouldn't have differences. We would just somehow agree or just nicely disagree, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, by the way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, people tell me I'm boring too. So if I just want to agree to disagree and be nice, I guess I'm boring. So that's not extremely fun. I always say that I'm an empiricist. I try and follow what the evidence says, but that's boring too. It's better to think that the Earth is flat. It's more fun. It's exciting. It's kitschy.
Mm-hmm.
I know many people who do, and they seem to get great joy from it. I don't know. Even though there's simple tests you can perform yourself in your local area to prove that the Earth is not flat. Anyways.
Please provide those links after we're done. That would be great.
Which links are we talking about here?
For the test that people can do in their local neighborhood to make sure, that the Earth is actually round.
Sure.
Test those out.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I can do that. There's a number of sources out there. Actually, it's funny. The Flat Earth community several years ago hosted their own video live where they performed this test, and in the end of the video, they disproved the Flat Earth, and right on camera. But then again, after it was disproved, and the guy, I don't remember his name, the guy who they disproved it, then again, he ended up flip-flopping again later, because now it's like, no, it can't be real. It can't be true. So that goes back to what is fair. Is it fair to hold empirical truths, or is it fair to hold normative truths only, or anywhere in between? And where do we draw that line of what, what that is, and what's right, and who's right, and who's wrong? I don't know if there's an answer to any of that either.
Causing unnecessary harm, promoting growth, prosperity, love, and kindness. I mean, those are the skills I tend to weigh things on.
What do you think about that, Pierce?
There's a little bit of roboting there, but I think I got all of it. I think I'm on board. I was trying to, in my mind, reconstruct the beginning of that sentence, and I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, no worries. It was.
But I'm pretty sure I'm on board.
Basically, I said I don't know if there's a right answer there. I don't know if there's truths that we can come to that are absolute, that can prove one person is wrong and one person is right. Absolutely. And I think Kyle was saying, well-being for people, reduce suffering, do what we can to help people. Am I getting you right there, Kyle?
Oh.
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't consider those to be a truth claim. I would consider those to be a goal. I do share those goals, though.
I think I agree. Those are my goals as well. And Kyle, we talked about this earlier. That's where I am. It's like I agree with you. There's just nothing fundamental to say that someone by choosing those agreements with us are fundamentally right or wrong. I brought up, and we're going to wrap this up, I think. I brought up the example of Elon Musk earlier. If Elon Musk becomes the emperor of the earth and propels humanity into further typed civilization on the Kardashev scale, and that's what humanity becomes, there's nothing I can do to stop that. I don't want that. I don't think he's got the right strategies. I don't think that's going to be the outcomes of those particular efforts, but it's possible. So and along with that, he could turn into a recurrence of Hitler again. Sorry to bring up another kitschy topic, and kill more people. But I can't say fundamentally that killing people to make humanity move into the future is fundamentally wrong or right. I believe it is wrong. My goal is that it is wrong. I can't fundamentally say it's wrong because people die all the time for all kinds of reasons. And it seems some people, at least today, and for a long time in history, have had to die in order to move forward into the future. I don't want to justify it in any way, shape, or form. But it's just fundamental truths that we don't have answers to. All we can say is, this is what I believe. This is what I think. And and then on top of that, like I said, I weigh as heavy as I can towards empirical evidence. I try not to make those normative claims without some fundamental empirical truth to it that gives me, guides me to an answer, or as best an answer as we can have. But I talked a lot, so Pierce, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm on board with you. Like that would be like, for example, with Elon Musk, right? That would be like a predictive normative claim. So it'd be a future prediction with regards to the normative claim. Like, can you prove that someone's wrong about that? I would agree. You really can't. I think it's dependent on the goal. If you do have a goal in mind, and it happens to not be predictive, because predictions are hard. Let's be real. I mean, you can get pretty confident. Don't get me wrong, but if it's like a current time, a normative claim, and you attach that goal to it, and you say this is the goal within this normative claim, I think that becomes a truth claim in itself when you attach that goal. So I think you can prove it to be right or wrong, yes or no. If you attach that goal, without that goal attached, then
right.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
We would have to make the distinction between a truth claim and what the actual truth is, because anybody can make a truth claim about anything. It doesn't have to have any empirical reasoning or truth behind it, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. That's the normative aspect.
Yeah.
So totally on board with that. Two-day David, nice to see you.
Let's get him up here if he wants. Do you mind if we
Yeah,
bring him up here
absolutely.
just for a few
Of
moments?
course. Jump on up here.
And by the way, you're being streamed, David, if you didn't
Oh yeah,
get the memo.
Yeah, I hope everybody's aware. Oh no, Mike, apologies. Well, you can type. We can read stuff if you want. Read stuff off for you and take your questions. If we can see you in Discord. I
You can also
apologize.
turn on your camera and start doing sign language or charades, and we will totally get it. We
Yeah.
got you.
You could do that as well. Anyways, it's 6:40 now. I'm thinking maybe I want to give. Does today, David? Do you have any questions you want to ask? Say anything before we sign off? Yeah, East Coast represent, baby. Yeah, I need more East Coast people. I'm like, nobody's on my schedule, so. All right. So, well, today, David, I think we're getting Billy the Kid now. I think we're getting ready to sign off. It's been cool. Pierce, do you want to say anything else before we sign off?
I think about that for just one moment.
Sure. I'm not afraid of silence.
Yeah, I do. I'll make a little closing remark, if you don't mind. Like, with regards to having these conversations and in groups, out groups, we talked about that. I've recently questioned whether or not conversations like this can ever have a significant impact on things we see going on in the world, right? Are they going to impact? Am I going to have any type of impact on, what happens out there? I know at the beginning I said, like, there was these 2 individual examples, and the rest I don't know about. I guess that's what I want to figure out. That's what I want to strive to determine, like, what's the best way to talk to people? What's the best way to figure out what the heck we're gonna do to figure our stuff out, and hopefully come to some common goals. Hopefully figure some stuff out, figure out how to take care of each other.
Kyle?
So that's been on my mind. But
Oh, thank you, Pierce. Kyle, anything?
Yeah, thank you, Pierce. Well, it goes without saying that you have had a significant effect on a lot of people. Whether that be good or bad, it doesn't really matter at this point. The fact of the matter is that you matter. There's something about you. We like it. We dig it. We're questionable about it. Yeah, some of us detest it. However, these are important conversations to be had, and I'm rooting for you. I really am.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to do this again. Like, I'd like to make this a regular thing with you if you want. We can trade off. Maybe do some on your channel, some on my channel. I think that'd be cool. We could think of some other content engagements. But I think let me repeat a little bit of what you said. I think I heard you say that you don't think you're going to have a significant impact. I mean, I agree with Kyle. I think you can have an impact, and you do have an impact, and that's why with that we have a great responsibility to be stewards of the information that we present. And absolutely, we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to put stuff out there that's wrong, but we should be really cautious around those things and who we harm along the way, who the casualties are. And that, I know that's a really nebulous and hard thing to navigate. I think it's a rare skill to just be able to also put yourself out there like this. So, so yeah, I'm rooting for you too, man. I've really enjoyed our engagements. I loved our first one. I appreciated you reaching out to me and giving me the offer. I thought, even though I didn't think I came to bat well, but I'm still under that. I'm learning, and I'm figuring out how to do it better as I go along. But I really appreciated that, and I hope we can continue to build some community here. That'd be great.
Cool. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, just a very quick clarification. It may not be. It's not necessarily my stance that I don't have an impact. It's more of a questioning if I do, like a lack of confidence, I guess you could say.
A lack of confidence that you're having an impact. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, just being slightly nitpicky there.
I gotcha. Interesting. Well, yeah, to that I'd say, yeah, again, I'd say the same thing. I think you do have an impact, and we should just be careful of the balance of that impact. That's all I was saying. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So.
I believe I understand you.
All right. Well, let's do this again soon sometime.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure I put your link to your channel in the description here, so for the live. So
Cool.
you know, everybody look up Pierce. Let's keep these conversations going, hopefully, with as little combat as possible. Or maybe just maybe one day Pierce and I will get in the ring. Who knows?
We'll grab some swords and
There you go.
duel it
Well,
out.
I'm all for the gladiatorum, man. That's my thing. That's what as long as it's consenting, I'm cool with it. So, all right. Well, look, thank you, everybody. It was fun tonight. Once again, hopefully, we'll get better at doing this. And thanks again, Pierce. Let's do something again sometime soon. Tthank you, Kyle.
Cool. We'll do.
Thank you. Don't be a stranger. Bye.
Yeah, you too.